obviously, the whole world is kind of turned on its head at the moment. Um, in terms of the impact on your own agency with kind of COVID at the moment, we'll get to some tactical questions. How's it affecting your kind of client base, particularly the ones that operate kind of with a local nature? How's it affecting their attitudes to marketing, and how are you dealing with those difficult conversations around should they be cutting back? How are you convincing them to see the opportunity that we've got with us, in the market today?
Yeah, I mean, just to be like totally transparent, we have clients that are just like canceling with us like everybody else, right? That are shut down, and there's no point in them engaging in any kind of specific spend right now, right? Like a good example is we work with like a large movie theater ticket times aggregator. No point in doing any SEO for them right now, right? Like there's no movie theaters happening. That's not going to be a thing for a while. And so there's no need to kind of go on and do anything. Whether that happens, whether when like the world gets back to normal, SEO gets back to normal for them is a different thing, right? For SMBs, I think it's also really challenging, right? Like a lot of them, SEO is kind of an investment in the future. And for a lot of them, there's a question of, will they be in business in a year from now, right? And so in a lot of those instances, again, it's like really hard to have a kind of discussion about whether or not they should be investing in SEO, right? Like you can't make bets on where you're going to be in a year if you're not sure if you're going to be around in a year. Now, that being said, all of our like big box retail stores and larger brand clients, like they're definitely planning to be around in a year, right? Like, and so the opportunity to invest in SEO for them is real right now because they have, depending upon the state of their business and how over or under leveraged they are, cash flow, blah, blah, blah. They have money to spend on where they're going to be in a year from now and need to plan on being the market leaders, right? So there's a lot of opportunity if you have clients that are kind of at the top of their, that again, are going to be around in a year's time, right? That are certain of their market position.
And are you sort of shifting your kind of current tactics for them in terms of, are you kind of undertaking kind of longer term projects or kicking things off that you otherwise might not have done because now is a more opportune time?
Not really. We're looking at like for some clients, we are looking at like what's a particular win for them right now, right? Like this is one of the discussions happening in search, which is like how much of search results are changing because of user behavior or like what Google's doing behind the scenes, right? And so as user behavior changes in a world that is rapidly changing, then the way that people are going to engage with businesses are going to change. So.
Okay. And are you seeing any kind of sort of practical changes in kind of Google's attitude? I mean, someone just put a question in, do we really expect things to get back to normal? I mean, do you think what things will just kind of pop up and pick back up in terms of, let's say, the kind of the SEO landscape, the channels that we use, the kind of levers that we pull? Do you see this as just a hiatus, or do you see there being some significant changes that will come through this?
Yeah, so this is where I think it's where there's like a lot of tunnel vision happening in the SEO space, right? Like there are people that are winning right now, like objectively up and winning, right? Like I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm not saying that like the world we live in is worth their winning, but there are clear winners, people who are overperforming, right? On top of that, we have clients that work in like business verticals that are not going to stop in any way, shape, or form. A good one is a company that does compliance software, or again, big box retail stores that are open in the emergency because they serve particular products, right? Like Walgreens, not a client of ours, but like Walgreens and CVS's SEO strategy long term isn't necessarily going to change. What they're going to be targeting is going to change, right? And so, back to normal and picking back up, there may be industries that don't ever pick back up, right? And there may be ones that are doing that are going to be doing way better after the kind of COVID-19 quarantine pandemic situation than they were beforehand. This is very like vertical and business specific.
And do you see that being a kind of a sort of factor of consumer behavior changing, or the fact that the kind of essentially the kind of technical digital marketing landscape changing?
Yeah, so Built Visible put a really good case study out, or a really good business case out by Jeff Griffiths, their managing partner, the other day, that we've been talking about incorporating Google Trends into a lot of our automation and analytics work. And his piece was just like a perfect business case on why you have to be looking at some of that stuff in order to be like understanding SEO opportunity, right? Because again, we're like, look, we're talking about a world where search volume is a lagging metric that is months behind, and we have a situation that is fluid and changing every day, right? So Google Trends is not even good, like like good, but it's the best thing you can use to kind of look at data kind of compared to what you're normally looking at, right? So we have a project where we're talking about being able to look at kind of general marketing trends in our analytics work to be able to identify opportunity. I think that that's going to be a huge part of SEO moving forward.
But do you think, in terms of the trends, I mean, do you think what people are doing now is kind of essentially will be abnormal behavior or unusual behavior come, you know, three months down the line, when people's lives are kind of getting back to usual? I mean, do you think analyzing trends today can really tell us about the longer term future, or are we just in this kind of odd window of time where everything is different and unusual?
I mean, I don't think people are going to get back on cruises en masse for a long time, right? I think it's going to be a while before people are flying a bunch again, right? I think that there are some of these like consumer behavior patterns that are going to take some time to return to normal, right? Because of the way that some of the core business were involved in the current pandemic, right? I think that there's just going to be some social discomfort for a while, and social distancing is going to go on longer than like stay-at-home orders exist, right? Maybe not for the entire population of the people that weren't social distancing, but there's going to be some societal impact coming out of this. I should really look into like my poli-sci. I have a master's degree in political science. I should really look at like the post-Spanish flu 1918 pandemic and see how industrialization changed, right? What were the trends for industrialization after that pandemic?
Very interesting. In terms of the role of an agency, then, any agency of any size and the kind of relationship they have with their clients, how do you see that evolving? Either if we had the COVID sort of problem without it, how do you see the relationship between an agency and how it should be pitching services and how it should be servicing clients? I'm thinking agencies are sitting at home thinking, okay, I've got to build my business up again in X months when we come out of this, rather than just pick up the strategy that they had before. Do you see an evolving strategy for the relationship between agencies and businesses, and how they should be changing the way they plan to work, what they plan to offer to help their clients?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that it just like forces people to have like really serious hard thoughts about their business and consulting services, right? Like, what were you offering before that made you a differentiator from all the other people offering marketing services, local SEO, link building, citations, content creation, or whatever, right? Like, what's your value add? What do you do that's better than everybody else? How do you discuss that, right? How do you talk about what your unique selling or value proposition is to clients or prospects in a way to differentiate yourself from market competitors? I can tell you, for us, part of the way that we do it is just like the way that Andrew and I act in like the real world is how we act with clients, right? Which is being very kind of straight and frank with them, which is not a normal kind of client communication behavior for large brands, right? Like, they usually don't get frank communication. They usually get people blowing smoke up their ass all the time in order to get more budget out of them or whatever, right? Like, there's very few frank conversations happening there. And so I think that that's like an important thing on the SMB side, right? Is not trying to making sure that you're not trying to get all the budget you can out of clients, right? Like, you want to capture budget, of course, but like, you got to really be showing your value. Otherwise, why stay with you instead of going with somebody else?
And it is true, because when you look at your website, I mean, the design of it hasn't changed a huge amount over the sort of many years, and it's clear that you almost, I mean, I met Darius, that you take a kind of an anti-marketing approach to kind of what you do, and the kind of language that you use. It isn't full of fluff. It's kind of straight to the point. It's quite brutal sort of sometimes. Is that a clear sort of brand approach for you that you use in all the kind of touch points that you have and all the kind of communications you have?
It's a core part of our business, right? Yeah, it is a core part of how we kind of construct SEO and how SEO is to local SEO guide, right? Like, part of SEO is telling people their babies are ugly, man, and it's hard. And you have to be able to like not just like deliver the hard news and be like, ha ha ha, your baby is ugly, I told you the hard news, right? Like, you have to get them to change it, right? Like, you have to get them to fix it. You have to alter the strategies, right? And so part of that is getting buy-in, that you're telling them things for a meaningful reason, and not just to like be critical, or not just to like match them up to SEO best practices, right? Like, you have to have a business strategy for them in order for them to make more money, right? Or drive more leads, or get more visits, or see more baby rhinos, right? Whatever it is your clients do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fascinating. Okay, we'll come back to that. Let's jump into some of the kind of questions that people have had in. So, a number of kind of tactical questions around the kind of obviously kind of way GMB has allowed businesses to kind of mark themselves as kind of temporarily closed during this time. I mean, how are you handling that situation? What are the sort of, do you see any kind of pitfalls from an SEO point of view with people using that? Or should people be marking themselves as just closed, or all their hours are kind of closed? What's your sort of take on the best practice for if a business is temporarily shut at the moment?
Yeah, so I'll be like totally straightforward. We do not have any temporarily closed businesses. We only have modified hours, right, and different hours for things. But I would tell you that I was initially very skeptical of temporarily closed because it had a filter that removed you from search. Just to like speak about theoretical SEO, right? If you are like removed from search from a filter, then like other people are getting clicked on, things are happening, rankings are moving, right? And so when that filter is removed, you like a race was happening and you weren't in it, right? So like just like again, pure theory, that would concern me. Now the temporary close does not filter the listing out of search, right? There's no impact to search visibility for temporarily closed. And so
Okay.
if there's no impact to search visibility for it, then I don't think it would impact your rankings ever, right? I think that the GMB team was like paying a lot of attention on the temporarily closed feedback in particular on Twitter, and took a lot of it to heart in order to make it a more like business friendly rollout, right? Less risk for the business owners and SEOs.
Okay, fun. And do you presume that once the situation is all cleared up, that filter will be reintroduced back in, and they'll change the role of that temporary closed?
Yeah, this is the question, right? Like as they're changing items on their back end to be able to like fit the current circumstance. You design software, right? You guys build software. Software is like a physical thing. You can't just like revert it to your like 3-week old type of software, right? So this is like the GMB posts via the API, the way temporarily closed works, all these labels. Like, do they have a meaningful ability to change them all back after COVID-19, or are we going to go through a very rough period of GMB shifting back to the way it normally does, right? Like, anybody that works at GMB, I would always say, or works with GMB, I would say brace yourself for some dumpster fire.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a bit of period of confusion, but frankly, it'll probably be welcome confusion to the general global confusion we're living in at the moment. A question that someone has that Kira has asked is her client's a gym, they're closed, but they're providing kind of online classes. What would you suggest is the right approach for dealing with the kind of closed scenario there?
So this is exactly why I say things that like local is more than just GMB, right? Because that business wants to rank for like online workout queries, right? They want to rank for queries that are related to driving online classes. You would want to make sure that you have information in your GMB profile, in the description, in like the service menu, and all these places products or services offered in the products or services field, in order to drive people to your website, right? Like, we focus, this is like kind of quasi related, but we focus really heavily on driving for big box retailers, driving users to to the website via GMB, and then having them convert via e-commerce once they get in via local, right? Like big box stores en masse can make millions and millions of dollars a month doing that because they can just solve the need online rather than having people go to the store. Your gym is the exact same way, right? Like they offer alternative services that are just not about going to the location, and you need to like focus the entire SEO strategy on being able to capitalize on both of those.
Interesting. So there's something that I guess I got a physical business that would typically sell physically, but is now online, can learn from the strategy that you're outlining there in terms of the big box stores that have an e-commerce and a physical platform. So essentially, how do you kind of craft your SEO strategy to drive e-commerce traffic and e-commerce business through typical kind of local SEO avenues?
Yeah, very, very can talk quite a bit of detail about that, right? It's all about being able to set products and categories on the GMB profile page, being able to separate out all of the departments into department listings that you can so that you have a profile that's focusing on particular categories. It's about being able to create robust location pages that mention the term that you're trying to rank for, right? And also have like child pages for separate services. And so you just have like a very traditional SEO, right? You have like a page for everything that you're trying to target. You have good internal links. You have the words on the page. You're making sure your site is well interlinked. For the gym, I would actually totally suggest looking at a bunch of yoga studios. I'm sure that yoga studios are doing it, particularly like the big ones in places like New York and LA and San Francisco, are doing a great first already offer online classes as a part of their offering, and then also are some of them are probably working to drive people to those really well.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so there's a lot that can be learned from those businesses that are usually function in this way. They make the most of that kind of local online traffic to drive kind of online sales.
Just real
Okay.
quick, the way I generally think about this is there are like 4 or 5 types of local businesses, right? There's like the traditional local like SMB, right? There's the traditional big box store. There's a local marketplace like DoorDash or Postmates, stuff like that, that focus on like food delivery and stuff that are highly local. There are directory sites, right? Like the internet yellow pages. And then there are the mixed case businesses that have like service plus local, right? National service plus or e-commerce plus local service plus e-commerce, right? And those all have different models on how you want to be kind of focusing for optimizing search, because there are different queries that different parts of the site or the business can rank better for, right? Like there's a lot of models, different models for local search. And so, I think now we're going to see people expanding into more diverse ones rather than just like GMB, GMB, GMB.
Yeah, interesting. I'd love to kind of maybe we could tap you up for an article around that, Dan, because that sounds like you've kind of broken that down a lot more, kind of sort of prior to the situation. Okay, let's go to the next question. And these questions do jump around, by the way. There's not really kind of much kind of sort of topic theming to this, so kind of stick with us. I guess the first one actually is a well kind of tried and tested question related to sort of service area businesses. Is there an optimal service area size for GMB listings, assuming they wanted to go as wide as possible? Should businesses be just focusing on a realistic service area, or should they just scale it as far and wide as their business actually offers? And what impact might that have on their ability to rank in all areas or some areas?
Yeah, I mean, being a service area business, just to be again totally frank, is a albatross for ranking in local search, right? Google wants to rank physical businesses. Their system is set up to rank physical businesses. They know, like inside the geo team, they know that they are disadvantaging service area businesses and are trying to fix that, right? Like, so just you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware that you have to be like you're fighting an uphill battle. So that is important in terms of like the service areas, right? So there are like guidelines on how like what you're allowed to do in terms of where your service areas can be depending on how many locations you have. Like I believe it's 1 per state or as large as a state in the United States. But since you're already disadvantaged and Google disadvantaged you through the way that they set up their system, you might want to be pushing the boundaries as much as you can in order to try to reclaim some of that real estate that you don't have access to, right? And so this is where things like experimentation are really important. Creating service area pages, right? A page that targets like, or geo category pages, we call them, but a page that targets like a category, service, or product plus a location. Google is ranking those in organic search all the time these days. We just like run sprints around those so much these days.
Interesting. So what's your kind of strategy then for kind of creating those pages, and how do you avoid things such as the whole kind of doorway page scenario, or duplicate content, or kind of thin content when you're creating that for a multi-location business? How do you effectively, what's the sort of template you use, what's the style you use, and what are the things to get right when building out those pages?
Yeah, lots of research, right, to make sure that Google is ranking those pages for those queries across the country, and to see what the example, like what the ranking pages look like, right? We do tons of research. And so I would say that in general, the strategy for getting those pages to rank is to make sure that they're designed to like look like not just like look like, but to be a location page, right? It has all the information that's targeting, like to target that geographic location. It has all the information that you would have on a normal location page. And then you're heavily talking about the service or product category in particular that you're targeting, right? Like you can't create like 500 of these per location, but if you have like 1 or 2 that make a ton of sense, then you definitely should. A good example would be something like if you're a furniture store and you have like a category, like you're a regional furniture store, 30 locations, and you have a category that is particularly beneficial for you, right? Like let's say it's children's bed or children's bedroom furniture. You would want to create a sub page off of all your location pages that basically mirror your location pages, but are about child's bedroom furniture, right? Like you want to go hard on the category, the category plus location that you're trying to rank for.
And how do you then, how far can you take that strategy before it A becomes sort of, very, very hard to manage at scale, and B starts to become detrimental to your optimization, and Google starts to really, I mean, if you've got 30 locations and you're building 20 pages per location that are very similar, what kind of rule of thumb have you found in your research is the kind of sweet spot, and how do you make sure you're sort of, I guess, promoting the categories that matter the most?
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. You have to make sure that you're only promoting the categories that matter the most. I can tell you, I've done a lot of talking with people that run like large aggregator and marketplace sites about this stuff to see how they kind of handle that strategy, right? Because they create these category pages for like DoorDash is a good example, right? Like Mexican food, Lake Forest, that's a page they have, right? Or cars.com, right? Toyota F-150 Lake Forest, that's a page they have, right? They have a lot of these, and there's a lot of the SEOs in these organizations have a lot of like testing and theories around the number that they can have before they see their indexation drop or their like traffic on aggregate go down for that template. I talked to one gentleman at a large aggregator who said that whenever they went above 500 of them, they saw a net decrease in traffic, right? Like the new pages might have been getting traffic, but like the total number of traffic didn't go up, right? And so again, always be testing, man. Always be testing, right? Like you just got to be slowly pushing these things, measuring, and then when you see like your aggregate traffic not going up because you're pushing too many, reevaluate, right? Like you got to be judicious.
And if you're a smaller, SEO consultant, you're not working with such a big organization, do you believe the threshold is much greater because you're not having you're not essentially creating so many pages for so many locations, you're just optimizing 1 to 3 locations?
Yeah, I mean, lawyers are a good example on this, right? And I know that people hate on like the practice area pages for lawyers, right? Like a legal service in city pages. But I can tell you that like those rank really well if you do them properly, right? And you're targeting the ones where there is like specific intent in like the queries for it, and you're delivering the same type of content that's in the SERPs for it. Like you're gonna rank well for those. You're gonna drive business for them.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Dan. And we also covered the next question was around, kind of ranking outside your area, in terms of kind of building, the kind of sort of location pages. Question about actually kind of website conversion. Is it possible, or do you think in terms of, we talked about traffic, but also the flip, the kind of next sort of part of the journey is kind of conversion. And the question was, can you have too many kind of conversion opportunities on your website that you end up really kind of diluting the impact of each one, putting people off, not getting a kind of optimal kind of conversion rate?
Yeah, I mean, if you have overlapping pop-ups when I enter your site, I'm just going to leave, right? Like there's a ton of conversion elements that can deliver terrible user experience just in terms of like navigating the site and blocking my purchase intent. But like y'all should like Salt Agency is doing a virtual con on Friday to just go over technical SEO. Like if y'all like want to talk about too many conversion points, y'all need to see Jamie Alberico's presentation on like what having too much JavaScript does to your site speed and how that destroys your ability to rank and render, right? Like there's
Okay.
a lot about this stuff, particularly in terms of dynamic conversion elements that have nothing to do with like the CRO themselves and everything to do about like you have 30 pieces of asynchronous JavaScript running on your site and your site is now broken.
Okay, so what was that conference?
Salt Agency is doing VirtualCon on Friday. It's like a totally virtual online conference thing.
Okay,
Speak at
maybe.
7:30 Pacific time.
Okay, one of our, I'll ask Steph or Jamie if they can share that link in the sort of chat there. So, but in terms of from a local kind of conversion point of view, typically people will have a number to call, they'll have a kind of contact box, they'll have the address. How do you, for your kind of physical sort of retail or physical kind of store clients, do you have a kind of hierarchy of conversion that you want to kind of drive people down, or is your strategy just to give the right contact options so that they appeal to each individual sort of preference?
Yeah, so like the way that we think about location pages in general, like the conversion elements is like what I was talking about earlier. It's like about pushing them into like the e-commerce or like lead funnel, right? It's not about necessarily the like how do you get them to, when you visit the location page, how do you get them to visit the store? That's like an entire separate process, right? Where you're measuring, if you're measuring how much your like organic traffic is impacting your in-store visits, right? That's kind of a ancillary process to be able to tie to business goals. Most people honestly aren't doing that, even though they should be. And so, I would focus. I would focus on doing that in all honesty, right? If you're a small location and you can tie like increases in location page traffic or increase in organic traffic to increase in store visits just through like click counters or like door triggers or whatever, then you can just say like, hey, here's a chart. When our organic traffic goes up, our in-store visits go up, and we're converting, right? Like that's the conversion point for most SMBs is a phone ring or a appointment.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so what was another question that we had? It's a really interesting question, actually, and one I've wanted for a while. Looking at our own, we recently did a relatively sort of small sort of site structure change where we shifted kind of content around. The question was, what are methods that could be used to change the landing page that is ranking for a particular search query? So if you've got like a, if you want to go, okay, we're getting lots of content or lots of traffic through on this page, but actually that's not the optimal page for conversion for us. How might you go around making either that page convert better or shifting which page is ranking for a certain search term?
Canonical tags and no index tags and internal links on shifting it around, right? It really depends on like what the facts on the ground are, right? Like say you have an old piece of content and you wanted to update it, we generally would like update the original piece of content itself and deploy like updated schema tags and make sure that there's like an updated date on it. But yeah, so I don't know if that quite answers your question there, but on the changing it around, right? You can just like place a bunch of internal links pointing to other pages. This is how we deal with like a lot of keyword cannibalization sometimes, right? You just like go into Search Console, look at all the pages that are ranking for a term. And when you see like if it's like lawyer Philadelphia or whatever, sorry, I'm gonna pick on lawyers right now. And you see that there are like 7 pages ranking for like sexual harassment lawyer Philadelphia, and it's the home pages ranking for it, but you want the sexual harassment page to rank for it. Every page then that's ranking for a sexual harassment lawyer needs to have an internal link pointing to the page that you want to rank to sexual harassment lawyer with the anchor text sexual harassment lawyer. Right, like
Okay.
you gotta send the signals.
And do you find that alone is enough to move the needle, or do you find there are other tactics? If that doesn't work, there's another step to go to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're deprecating the content, right, you can obviously like canonical to the new piece of content. Google doesn't always respect canonical tags if they're not like the content isn't like a clear match. You can just straight 301 redirect it, right? Like you can deploy the hammer and say, hey, Google, you're looking over here. You need to look over here now. That's generally like the hammer strategy for it. Internal links, having clear internal links to pages, right? Like a common one we run into is like an old version, like not even like a re-architected version of a page, but an old version of a page is still ranking like HTTP versus HTTPS or some old migration version, because all the internal links are pointing to the old URL, and the old URL is 301 redirecting to the new one. So Google just sees like all these old signals, and they're like, oh yeah, that old URL works.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So I guess if you haven't kind of tidied up your site, that could be a problem. Okay. All right. Brilliant. Thanks. Thanks, Dan. Where are we going to next? Another question that kind of came through, actually, around voice search. What's your take on the scale of the opportunity? I mean, voice search gets a lot of airtime. A lot of people kind of talk about it. There's a lot of kind of hyperbole around voice search. What is your take on the genuine scale of opportunity in voice search for a typical local business beyond brand searches? So, discovery searches, and how much businesses can actually benefit from really thinking and working around with voice search.
I posted an article I wrote a few years ago that says local voice search goes together like sardines and peanut butter. So no opportunity. I think that there is no opportunity. I am a big poo-pooer of voice search. It like never works for me. I can't get it to play music right. We like do a bunch of research in the piece I posted about how it's really hard to disambiguate. I think it's like a good marketing technology piece, and like it sounds cool and it could be good in the future, but like, man, the best voice search use we have in my house is letting Harper, who everybody met, play Frozen stories and Frozen songs.
Okay, so it doesn't really come into play with any kind of strategy to roll out for any of your clients.
We had we do some work with we did some work with Fandango, who is like the movie aggregator that I had talked about, put us on
Right.
pause earlier because no movies. But like when voice search and Alexa launched, they launched a skill for it. That makes tons of sense, right? Because they're a place where you can go in order to create a purchase transaction. But like that's not your regular SMB, right? To be able to like prioritize the development of an Alexa skill and plug it into your like transaction pipeline so that you can be monetizing like, hey Alexa, buy me movie tickets at this theater, right? Like it's there's really no, I think, easy opportunity to monetize this for SMB.
And so your article is a few years old, and do you still feel that's exactly the same situation now and in the future?
Yeah, I mean, my problem with it is the tech, right? My problem with voice search is the tech and the difficulty of the tech and how hard it is for it to make it better and how hard it is to be able to drive meaningful search results for it. And I still think that that's true, right? Like a common problem I have with the technology in general is like, good example is I ask it to play a song and it does sometimes it'll do a web search for the song, right? It just doesn't know how to disambiguate well. It's a very challenging problem.
Fair enough. Okay, right. I've gone through the kind of canned questions. So why don't we jump to other ones that have had sort of good upvotes. So looking at the kind of question box now for you, Dan, I'll skip the ones you've already picked up on. Scroll right down. Actually, want to hear about what about kind of keyword cannibalization? So, working with the chain of chiropractors, we're ranked #1 in pretty much every city for chiropractor in city name, and also show up for other relatives like back pain. Should we still write service pages on back pain on related terms? Or maybe just do it in the bigger cities where we don't rank as easily for those specific terms. So I guess it's about that kind of, the depth of creating additional sort of pages, specific terms. If a business is already seeing good success there, should they kind of double down on those existing pages, or should they be building out specific pages for specific sort of services?
Yeah, this is where like the context is really important, right? If back pain is their main keyword that they're trying to rank for rather than like chiropractic service plus city, then they should keep it on the main page, right? If back pain is like their secondary or tertiary keyword they want to rank for, right, then they should move it to a subpage. The point is to like spec out so that you have like the buckets of the core keywords you want to rank for having their own page. So I can't answer that without diving more specifically into the client, but it sounds like they just need to do more work on back pain on their existing location pages.
Okay, so your strategy in that case would be to take it on a case-by-case basis with each particular kind of customer you're working with and their particular setup and scenario. And you've talked a lot about testing. That's obviously a big part of your approach and protocol that you use with your clients.
Yeah, we're big on forecasting and trying to work with clients to tell them what the benefit of SEO is going to be, right? Like Andrew and I both talk about this a bunch. People lean out of forecasting. You should lean into it. Businesses should have an understanding of what they get for their spend, right? Like if I was in-house and spending money on an SEO agency and they refused, like me as I am right now, say I left Local SEO Guide and started working in-house, whatever, and some SEO agency I needed help with something and they wouldn't give me forecasting, I would never hire them, not in a million years. Not a million years, right? Like I'm gonna spend a bunch of money on you, and then you're gonna get me fired because you don't deliver on your results. That's not happening, right? And so, yeah, testing is super important, right? Because you're the trusted source of people's budgetary expenses, right? If you're just deploying best practices on them and the best practices don't work, that's on you, man. That's on you. That's not on them. That's not on the client. That's not on the SEO industry, right? Like that's on the people that take the client's money and deploy the tactic. And so it's like I feel a personal responsibility that we have to be working to do research so that we can predict on impact of a tactic so that we can tell clients that they're going to get what they pay for, right?
And what that's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess it makes a level of sophistication in terms of ability to predict, and sort of forecast performance. What when you provide kind of predictions, what kind of KPIs and metrics are you providing predictions around for clients?
Yeah, so we have a post that we posted last week on a rice model that we use for technical SEO like predictions to be able to.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, to be able to scope like developer hours and potential reach to the budget that it would take, right? And so something like this would actually be a good example of that, right? Because there's a budgetary expense for creating the content for the subpages, right? There's the development push to get it live, and then there's the understanding about what the opportunity for the market size is, right? And so this is why like the back pain discussion is hard to answer, because I don't know those first two pieces, right? And it might not be worth like a $10,000 push to go for back pain when they have like a massage therapy, like this chiropractic franchise has a secondary business line that's massage therapy, right? And they could create a subpage for massage therapy and just get, add 40% to their net traffic and revenue, right? Like it's hard to tell.
Okay, interesting. But I guess kind of experience and longevity in the industry gives you, either like empirical data or kind of gut feel in terms of we know this is going to have an impact between X% and X%.
We did a lot of testing on the service area pages, like the geo category pages I mentioned earlier. That was like, we would roll those out slowly until we saw big wins with them. And once we saw big wins with them and saw it working regularly, it just became a core strategy of ours, right? We still have to be able to to push any strategy live here. I have to see it like working in the wild, right? Or we have to be like paid to be able to just do a test with a client and see if we can like break something or figure it out, right? Like, and so, yeah, you got to always be testing.
Always be testing. And is that a part of your pitch process for customers in terms of you talked about, this is the strategy, this is how we're going to approach this. Sort of testing and forecasting is a big part of what we do. And you find that kind of gives you that kind of extra kind of added authority and trust when that's part of your pitch?
Oh, definitely. And when we do like technical SEO and strategic audits for clients, we're like all on team prioritization, right? Like we make sure not to just like tell people like what they need to fix or whatever. I'm very anti SEO best practices. We tell people what their priority wins are and why, right? And what's going to be the best investments for their business, right? It just, my 2 cents on this is you get referrals and more business by winning for clients. And so make sure you win.
Indeed. Okay, let's jump into another question. This one comes from Joseph. He basically said he's very interested in what you did for SEO for retirement homes. He has a major senior living client. Could you kind of summarize, I guess what you found to be the most successful tactics and approaches for the retirement homes clients that you've worked with?
Oh boy, yeah. The distinction between senior living and assisted living in terms of keywords is such a distinction in that space, huh? Just so you know, assisted living is like a certification process, and like it's been a bit since I've worked in it, but the facilities that have like medical staff in them versus senior living, which is a non-compliance oriented one. And so senior assisted living is the big search term, but you're complianced out if you don't have the medical facilities. So you can't like put assisted living in your title tags. So you got to like really, really double down on the senior living keywords. You got to double down on the location pages. One of the things that we did that worked really well is this was a 300 location business, and they had they had an ERP, enterprise resource planning feed of all of their events in each locations. So we worked to get that like dumped into a JSON blob and then like piped into their location page sites so that they could have like a regularly updating content calendar like of activities. Right. And so, they had content on location pages that was updating all the time, stuff like that. You got to just work to create the robust location page experience.
Okay. But you think kind of a specific amount of work done on keyword research is critical for that particular industry, given the nuances between the different types of living setup that, someone can have.
Yeah, I probably just gave that person like a seizure or a heart attack talking about the difference between assisted living and senior living, right? Because that's when you get the angry calls from the clients and you put assisted living on something and they're like, take it down.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, another question, and this one I've tried to word this so it's kind of clear. So if the client has 3 major services, so one business, let's say they do HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, essentially 3 separate sort of service types, but they're all very important to the business. What is the kind of right, I guess, strategy? I think this is very kind of GMB specific here in terms of kind of primary category selection, potentially changing them sort of seasonally, or kind of creating multiple GMB listings, pinpointing each of those different services.
Oh yeah, I would work to create multiple GMB listings pinpointing each of those services, and I would work to like design our business in a way to make those listings be in Google guidelines compliance, right? Like that's something that multi-location businesses and brands can do better than SMBs, is they can just literally make their businesses be guidelines compliant to have departments. And so I would work really hard on that, because those are core separate categories, right? HVAC, electrical, and plumbing, and so they're not
Mhm.
going to necessarily all rank for the same keywords. And so you would want to, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier with separate department categories. And then this is also like, those are like the secondary and tertiary business units, right? That you would want to have like child pages for, right? So if your main one is HVAC, you would want to have a child page off of HVAC, the location page for HVAC that is plumbing, and you would also want to have a child page off of that location page that's HVAC for electrical, right? Like you would want to set up the whole ecosystem.
And that's on your own side, but within the kind of GMB environment, talking about kind of, the staying within or playing within the kind of Google kind of category guidelines, how would you structure each of those so that you're not just kind of creating what's duplicate listings, same address, different business name, essentially?
Yeah, I would do I would try to make them departments, right? I would try to get like a separate cashier, or just do whatever you needed to do to make the businesses guideline compliant so that you could call them departments, right? And then you can have separate GMB locations that splice out the keyword buckets you want to rank for, right? Like, so you may not be able to do that. The problem you're going to run into if you're not able to do that is, like I was saying, if you have like HVAC, electrical, and then plumbing, you're unlikely to be able to rank incredibly well for all of those, right? Like you're unlikely to have a GMB like profile page and a website location page, the things that send like links to where you should rank for, or that send signals to what you should rank for. You're unlikely to have enough to be able to rank dominantly on just 2 assets per business to be able to rank for all of those things. That's where the department and child pages on the website come in.
Okay. Okay, great. I hope that gives answer. Just taking down the next question. Sorry, there's one here from Guy Finley. It says, how do you broach the delicate subject of the client that has to have to furlough people, but you see online pickup and delivery services you're putting in place with other clients to keep them going? Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that necessarily means.
Tell them you can help them pay their staff, set up stuff for them that can help them keep their business going.
Yeah, sorry, Guy. Just trying to kind of trying to read that on the fly. I'm obviously not intelligent enough to to read the question in there. In reference to service area businesses, should you try and add additional locations if there's an important area that you aren't ranking for?
Yeah, I mean, if you have the ability to like scale out just tons and tons and tons of GMB locations easily, and you don't care if they get like slapped down and knocked out or whatever, go to town.
Okay, fair enough. Good answer. Comment from Sean. I've had a GMB profile suspended. I'm not sure why. I've checked everything. It looks good from a quality perspective. It's a treatment center, and it's an office location where people go to meet with someone about getting treatment. It's not an actual treatment facility. So I guess maybe it's a kind of not a triage, but essentially you're meeting someone to advise whether someone can get treatment, but it's not the treatment center essentially. A bit like a sort of sales office potentially for the kind of sort of treatment center. Is that an area that you've had much experience in, Dan, in kind of dealing with things around treatment and some of the sort of medical industries?
I mean, it sounds a little in terms of like what you're talking about, but mainly for like hospital groups or like university hospital groups. But you're allowed to have sales offices in GMB. You can have like a sales office for like the only reason we know this is we have done some work with people that do like skyscraper development and stuff like that. And so like the strategy is to rank the sales office because the buildings themselves aren't live, right? There's nothing to rank while a building is getting constructed. There's nothing to put on maps.
So a kind of marketing suite essentially for the kind of property, I guess, is a kind of equivalent sort of issue. It's an interesting one, but I guess
you want to rank for branded search or whatever, I assume, right? Like the thing you want to drive people to when they're searching for the brand.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I guess it's a legitimate location. It's manned, it's staffed, there's a phone number for it, it's physical, and it's there. People can kind of go there, but it's not. It's kind of marketing itself as a treatment center, although it's actually not. The treatment center is in a sort of different place. Yeah, it's a kind of unusual one. There looks like I would say Scott has provided an answer. So thanks, Scott, for kind of jumping in there about that. Do you know much about the kind of Google's changes to kind of disabling reviews recently? Because obviously they've disabled new reviews from going live, and they've stopped businesses being able to respond to kind of all reviews. Do you know that that's going to have where those reviews are like entirely hidden, or if they're having a kind of background impact on either sort of star rating or actually the kind of ranking capability for that profile?
So Google has been like really poor in communicating this, right? Like the forward communication about what's going on has been bad. So first, there's not a filter on them. They are literally blocked. There's like a block in the pipe, right? Like they're going into a queue. Is how Google is talking about it, right? Like where they are going to get. There's talk of moderation of the reviews, and then them getting pushed live when the quarantine is over. Whether that means they're going to like be moderating out reviews that are like about businesses that didn't like respond properly in time, or they're moderating out reviews that don't meet their guidelines, they're not telling. And when that's going to happen and what the like time frame is for getting those reviews live, they're not telling. So I wouldn't stop getting them, right? I wouldn't stop getting them.
Yeah.
Because if they do push them all live and you stop getting them, and there's this like huge spike of reviews that happen, and you're ranking, and everybody else gets all these awesome signals, great keywords and stuff in it, and you don't have any, that might negatively impact your performance, right? Like,
so you will get the benefit of them down the line. That benefit will just be kind of stored up and released as Google releases reviews, either post moderation or at sort of some point in the future. You're essentially kind of storing up the kind of the conversion and the ranking benefit of those reviews. Because I guess if your competitors are still generating reviews and they've got 30 reviews queued up to go live and you've got none, then you're going to be disadvantaged against them.
And the opposite is true if they have none and you have 30, right? Like you're going to be advantaged against them, right? So like if you're open and you're taking business, tell them, tell your customers, help you with the algorithm, leave you a review.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of kind of clients will be very kind of willing to help businesses at this point in time because they all know how much they're kind of struggling, and the business has got a good relationship with that particular kind of customer. I guess even if they're not serving at the moment, but you're a loyal customer, you've been going a lot, you've just never written them a review. It's a great time to be kind of cashing in on that. I guess that kind of emotional and emotive relationship between customer and client, so that you can use the kind of goodwill that's being that's definitely out there at the moment. People want to help businesses that are struggling. They want to help businesses they're loyal to kind of get as much life after the situation as there can be.
Yeah, talking to your regulars for sure. If you're doing if you're like a restaurant or whatever, and you're doing ticket and delivery or whatever, right? Or you're like a emergency plumber, right? And so you're open, but you're like only doing like 2 calls a week or whatever. Definitely ask for that review.
Yeah. Okay, another question. Actually, this question I had, so sorry, I'm going to jump in there. It's about mobile search, actually. And we did a bit of interesting analysis a while back on kind of some GA data that we had in our system around, I guess, the kind of volume of traffic to websites for different industries, and how much of that came from mobile, how much kind of came with desktop. And I was quite surprised actually how low in certain industries the percentage of mobile traffic was. I think the average is around 39%, but some industries it was under 30%, and some it was above sort of 50-60%. But given all the kind of chatter about the kind of growth of mobile over the years and how it supersedes desktop, I was expecting it to be higher. So I guess my question for you, Dan, working with businesses in different industries and different scales, how does your attitude and approach to how much emphasis you give mobile optimization change?
So I just dropped a link into the chat that a piece I published about a month ago about the mobile plateau. So all of the mobile data that you're talking about, Miles, and all the predictions about mobile growth were all created in the middle of a major uptick of mobile growth, right? Like phone growth, mobile traffic growth. So all of the models were predicated on a period of high growth. You can see the data right now that I linked to in that article where mobile traffic has plateaued, right? Like the device growth hasn't happened as much, and we're at generally a state of parity. I even talked to somebody at a large, I mentioned this in the post, but I talked to somebody at a large marketplace in the United States, and they saw at Q4, they saw an increase of desktop versus mobile. And so This is totally dependent on your industry. Like we have a B2B SaaS client that gets like 14% of their traffic from mobile or 19% of their traffic from mobile, right? We have a client that has like a hiking site, a large hiking site and app where they get like 70% of their traffic from mobile, right? And so you have to be, it's not the obvious no-duh ubiquitous thing that SEOs treated it as for a long time, right? Like there's a lot of difference from verticals. I actually have a question back for you, Miles. Do you see, since you guys do rank tracking and everything, do you guys see a big difference in desktop versus mobile ranking? Like, do you see a reason for SEOs to be focused on the ranking difference between devices now?
Not really. No, I mean, to be fair, we don't do a huge amount of kind of global analysis, but from the things that I look at, I don't see a major kind of significance in the kind of rankings. Yeah, it does vary and it does differ. I think it all depends on. I mean, because I guess looking at our own data for our own business, yes, we're a local SEO platform, but actually, you can't come and see us, so we're not really that interested necessarily in ranking kind of for locally related terms or near me type terms, because that's not the way that we interact with our kind of customers. So I don't see a market difference in that. But then again, I guess it might come down to, on an individual basis, the level of optimization work that someone's done. If someone has done absolutely nothing to gear their site to be kind of mobile friendly, then they might be hampered significantly on that perspective. But it's probably on a kind of case by case basis. But I was surprised looking at the kind of analytics data. We studied around 11,000 sort of GA profiles, data that we were given access to by our clients. Thank you, clients, for doing that. And then looking at kind of aggregate, it is interesting. Like, for example, looking at the percentage of kind of mobile traffic, restaurants is something like around 58%. But there were a couple down like 20% and some below kind of 20%. So it really does vary enormously. And actually, it made a lot of kind of common sense. It's just like, yeah, you can understand why people are looking for things like mobile search for restaurants, but on the go, getting directions, looking for things near them at that particular point in time, often quite a kind of spontaneous purchase, high mobile traffic, but things that are kind of considered purchases, not something you're looking for kind of spontaneously, sort of sporadic items. What was it? I think it was to do with like, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, I think it was therapists, for example. Why would you look for a therapist on your kind of mobile? You don't just walk around the streets looking for a therapist. You plan to look for that. You take some time. You can kind of consider it, and you work out where you're going. So the percentage of traffic going to that business from mobile was a lot less. Okay, I think final question for you, Dan, will go. Ignoring the whole kind of COVID sort of thing, what are the big issues and opportunities that you and your team that kind of are resting with, that occupies your mind for the future of our industry? The things that if you're running an agency, starting your agency, the things that actually you think people are going to become the big issues that we need to kind of tackle and face, so that we've all got jobs for the future.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what that is here, and it has nothing to do whatsoever with local SEO, right? Like, we're tackling automation, scalability, and natural language processing, and like, you can call it technical SEO, but it's like in-house back-end development work in terms of like how we deploy strategies and tactics for clients and how we can work with data in order to do better data analysis. A good example is like, people rely on third-party tools to do keyword research. I'm kind of over relying on third-party tools to do keyword research. We warehouse all of our data, client data, in Google BigQuery. I'm happy to just like rip through client data and look at their existing kind of monthly search impressions for keywords and looking at gaps and stuff like that, versus that data is better than what a third-party tool will get you, right? The ability to deploy basic BERT models or do basic natural language processing is easier now than it's ever been before. Like, you can get it deployed with a entry-level JavaScript engineer and some people that understand product. Like, if you work at an agency and you manage internal tools, you're the person that understands product, right? And so, all of these things are what's going to help deliver meaningfully qualitative different service levels than people who are doing everything manually through large amounts of data and focusing on microdata, right? Like, you gotta do the whole thing. You gotta be able to like do large scale research and do testing automatically using systems. And then you also have to be able to do like really granular research to be able to write good content, right? Like, what are the things that are in like the content piece? Like, we have a journalist, like just to peel away the seams, we have a backend JavaScript engineer and somebody who used to work as a journalist. One does development for us and one runs our content team, right? So like not SEO stuff. We're trying to marry a bunch of things together.
Interesting. So you've recruited them specifically for their skill sets to enable that kind of research and analysis.
Yeah, and like one of the things, like another one, like we do really technical link building. Link building for us is like a technical scale crawling process. But like, you know, digital PR is something that's kind of blowing up, whether you like it or you don't like it, right? And so, you know, people that do link building should be considering making sure that they're investing in the right types of tactics to be able to move the needle for their clients, right? If you're able to be a decider on hires or tactical strategies, right? Like make sure you're diversifying. I actually think COVID is a great wake-up call for that, right? It's like a really good wake-up call to show why it's important to diversify both in your client base and your strategy, right? Because things can just get taken off the table at a moment's notice.
Okay. Final question. What is your kind of, how do you tackle technical link building?
Yeah. So we're like super ultra SERP scrapers, data analysis people, like I've talked about, right? So we'll like use something like Majestic or Ahrefs, and we'll start looking at like the sites that are ranking. We look at sites that are ranking for a query, like a topic area, and we'll use Scrapebox or something else, and we'll just like rip all those sites that are ranking for a keyword base, right? Like 10,000 keywords in a topic area. We'll like rip them through Majestic. We'll see all the sites that are linking to them. We'll find all the stuff that they're linking to, and we'll build out like a link footprint of all the sites that are linking to all the other sites that are ranking for what were like the keywords that we're trying to capture. And then we'll create a bunch of content and we'll go out and we'll try to get links there.
Okay, just through old-fashioned traditional link outreach.
Yeah, but the way that we do the targeting is highly technical, right? So a little different than not that like the spray and pray way that a lot of link builders do link building doesn't work. It's just labor intensive, and we're not a link building shop, right? I don't have 3 junior link builders to do like massive mail merges and scale outreach. We have to dial it in a little bit better.
Interesting. Okay, fascinating. Right, we hit time. Dan, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. That was great. Thank you everyone for listening in. I think we covered pretty much every single question that kind of came in. So thank you for firing those into us. Thanks to Dan for his time, his expertise. That was absolutely kind of fascinating. I'll be totally honest that some of the technical stuff went over my head, but I will go and research.